Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Добро пожаловать. We have today a distinguished group of people, of scholars and practitioners of education, to discuss the question about the dynamics in education, in the education field. I'm Edward Crawley. I'm the rector of the Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technology, Skoltech, here in Moscow. And I'm going to just allow my panel members, my table members, to introduce themselves in one sentence so that you can learn who's at the table.
I'm pleased to be here. I'm Olivier Bréchard. I run a research institute in France called IRAE for Action Research in Education, and I'm part of different initiatives like the Open Education Challenge to identify new startups in the edtech in Europe.
Меня зовут Елена Казакова, я возглавляю.
My name is Елена Казакова, and I'm the head of expert community of the program of School League of Rosnano and representative of two universities, of St. Petersburg State University and Higher Institute of Economy, and we're interested in preparation of students to high technology education.
Это Сбербанка.
So I'm the corporate director of Sberbank.
From Harvard University, I'm the Vice President for Strategy.
Алексей Ситников, вице-президент Сколковского института науки и технологий.
Alexei Sitnikov, Vice President of Skolkovo Institute of Science. Good afternoon. I'm Margarita Barzhanova. I'm representative of the Ministry of Education and Science in China.
I'm co-founder and CEO of iVersity, an online education company in Berlin.
Isaac Frumin.
Isaac Frumin, Academic Director, HCE Institute of Education.
Research Chair Professor of Hong Kong Institute of Education and also the previous President of World Educational Research Association.
Thank you all. And I guess in view of the day, I should mention that I'm also a guest professor at Tsinghua University. Education is undergoing a dynamic change. There are new players, there are new technologies, there are new markets in the sense of broadening from national to regional to international markets. There's greater access of information. There's a very much more complex ecosystem than there was just only 10 or 20 years ago, in which education, in particular higher education, takes place. Many of us try to discuss these issues with our stakeholders, the stakeholders of education and of higher education, people like governments, industry, regional governments, startups, entrepreneurial communities. And in general, they tend to have the same type of advice for universities. In those nations where students pay for university, they say the costs are too high. They say that the graduates of the universities are not graduating prepared to influence the economy and contribute to social welfare. They say specifically that our students in general are not focused on innovation. And the students themselves are often the biggest critics of our university education, who tend to think it's boring and increasingly in some parts of the world does not lead to the type of opportunity and jobs that they had hoped when they entered the university. So these are all pressures that are acting on the higher education system throughout the world, some of them more so in some nations and some in others. But where there is pressure, where there's tension, there's also opportunity. As I said, the new technologies, more awareness of the needs, increasing support from government in things through the 5 in 100 program, which exists within the Russian Federation, and new players, new roles that are being played by, for example, corporate universities. So the main discussion here today will be what's changing and how do our different actors, the different agents represented at the table here, react to this change or actually stimulate and drive this change. How will corporate universities compete with existing universities? How will online universities compete with young universities, and so forth? So to begin this discussion today, I'm going to ask our colleague from Hong Kong, YC Cheng, to give with perhaps a short, if possible, broad overview. But before I do that, let me just explain the format of the meeting. I'll ask our speakers and experts to make some remarks, hopefully no more than 5 minutes, and then we'll have some discussion at the table. Then we're going to have a voting. You have a clicker on your table, a voting device, and then we're going to have Q&A, questions and answers from the audience, and then I'll hopefully try to summarize. So, YC.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very excited to be here to discuss with a group of world-class scholars, innovator. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Chairman and also the organizing committee inviting me to come. Thank you very much. To participate, to discuss this complicated issue, may I share some of my thinking on the big picture, of education reform and also the creative disruption. In the past 10 years, because of the globalization, you can see that the great impact from the technology advancement. You see that the international competition and the strong marketization. All these make the education, a different aspect of education, change a lot. I think up to now, we are facing two driving forces, on creative disruption in education. The first one is the market, the education market. The second one related to the paradigm shift in education, no matter school education or higher education. Let me say a few more on the education market. According to UNESCO's data, we can see that in the past 40 years, it's a huge increase, huge jump, in the number of tertiary students. Up to now, we may have around 180 million to 200 million university students. But in the past 10 years, we can see nearly 80% increase. And we can predict in the coming 10 years, there may be over 100% increase because of the fast expansion in China, India. Up to now, the enrollment rate is around 20%, 24%, something like that. It means that in terms of quantity, there is a huge market in higher education. You see that the traditional model of education or higher education or knowledge delivery is not sufficient to meet the market demand. Maybe in the Western world, Western country, they have the enrollment rate 70%, maybe high enough. But in Asia Pacific, it's far from enough. The second driver related to the quality side. As pointed out by Chairman, that the people are not satisfied with the quality of ongoing university education. Why? Because we need paradigm shift in education. In fact, in the last 20 years, we can see numerous education reform, not only in West, but also in East, in Hong Kong, in Australia, in UK, in Taiwan. Why? Because we changed the agenda, we changed the target, the goal, and the process of education to a new approach with a hope we can globalize, localize, and individualize our students' learning such that we can give them unlimited opportunity, to develop the capacity for lifelong learning, multiple thinking, and creativity such that they can survive. They can do an excellent job in the future. I think, but the existing model, the traditional model of knowledge delivery in education, clearly is not sufficient. In the context of higher education, we need our students not only achieve some knowledge, but also create knowledge. I think this is the key for innovation, for our breakthrough in the human development. When we discuss, we can consider these two factors together. I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's interesting as an innovator that you pointed out that in essence, the two forces acting on the university system are the market and the product. The demand for education and the way in which we go about educating people. Very, very, very precise. I've heard it estimated, by the way, that each year there's about 1 million new university entering students each year in the world. It's on the order of 1 million. So, for example, that would be, if my math is right, 100 universities a year at the size of 10,000 students per university. Right? It's a staggering idea. So, Leah, from Harvard, what's the view? What's the plan?
Well, I think it's important when you think about the United States to recognize that there is an enormous diversity of the types of institutions in the United States. And Harvard represents one kind of university, but we have many, many different variations running from for-profit to small undergraduate colleges, to large state universities, to the kind of large private research university that Harvard represents, or that MIT might represent. And so when we talk about it, it's hard to talk in broad generalities always. But let me talk a little from my perspective, from the perspective that I know the best. And I think one of the things that's most interesting to me in this moment is that we're having a conversation about this, about higher education, in a global context. Much of what YC has just said applies to the United States as much as it applies to Hong Kong or to the UK. And I think that in and of itself is a very interesting and very important moment for higher education. I think we have traditionally thought of it nationally, and that's really not the way any of us are going to be able to think about it going forward. So let me start by returning to some of the comments, Ed, that you made in the beginning when you talked about cost. Cost in the United States, where individuals pay for university, is a real issue, and is something that we as a country, as a nation, have to continue to think about very carefully. There are, again, many different models. At a place like Harvard, there is a great deal of help. People pay far less depending on their economic ability, but that's not true throughout the system in the United States, and I think that's really something we have to continue to think about. At the same time, the data on the economic benefits of a college education within the U.S. it's overwhelmingly clear that it's one of the best investments an individual can make. The numbers are typically that over a course of a lifetime, you will make $1 million more in salary if you have a college education than if you don't. And as I said, that's in the US, but that's a very clear, very good payoff for your investment. I think another important point that Ed raised was the question of the impact on society of universities, and what is the output of an education and of the work that universities do. And I think there again, it's very clear that the output of universities, especially in the areas of research, scientific research, are drivers, at least in the US, of economic growth. There's a great deal of translation from the basic research that happens in universities that ultimately become new and innovative technologies, medical developments, and really have fueled a great many companies within the United States. I'd also argue that an educated population is a very good thing for a democracy to have, and that the process of a more traditional liberal arts education is also extremely important, an extremely important contribution, and one that may be harder to measure than the economic growth. And I think that question of the role of education beyond simply the vocational, behind simply the job, is another thing that we as universities should not shy away from recognizing. Part of what we do is we give people the kinds of skills and abilities that YC mentioned that really have to do with the ability to adapt and to change and to take on new roles over time, and I think that is only going to be more important. In terms of innovation, a number of universities have started to do some very interesting things to support that. I think MIT, the institution with which Ed is associated in the United States, is a very good example. Harvard has an extremely successful innovation lab. Stanford is very well known for supporting it. We all could do more, but it is something that I think we are beginning to try to think about and to deal with. So I think that overall, I have great faith in the role of higher education over the long term. I think we are changing, we are adapting, we need to continue to. That's a good thing, that's not a bad thing. But I think all you need to do is look at the numbers of additional people coming into the system who want higher education, to know that there's going to continue to be a market for it, there's going to continue to be a desire for it. The question is really going to be, how are we going to reshape and provide lots of different and exciting opportunities for people over time?
Thank you. Impact and the good investment that it makes for an individual. And of course, in those nations where there's education more broadly available without fee, it's an even better investment, but there it's a national investment, right? Well, Hannes, are you trying to compliment Harvard, or are you trying to knock Harvard off?
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for having me. No, obviously, you know, we're very much inspired by the pioneering work that's being done at lots of American universities, and we look to that as well as to what's happening here in Europe to see, you know, how we can go about improving the situation and using innovation to further innovation. Now, I've also co-authored a book on the future of the university in a former life, so to speak, but I won't go into that in detail, but I think one of the core theses that we advanced in that book is relevant in this context, and that is that if we value higher education as it is, and we want to provide that at scale, you know, we'll have to think about innovation. And now at Iversity, we are in the online education space, and we are the leading European player in the massive open online course field. We work with universities to help bring their courses online so they can reach a global audience. In a nutshell, we provide free online education and make it count. These two parts go together. So we enable you to take great courses from institutions around the world, no matter where you are, to earn recognized certificates. And I think that last part is crucial, because MOOCs are great, but I think it's time that we take the next step. There is a great diversity in the system of higher education, and you know, bringing the different kinds of approaches that are provided by these different kinds of institutions to students around the world, I think can be of tremendous benefit to these institutions as well as to the students themselves. Leah mentioned the diversity of the American system of higher education. I once attended a lecture by a professor from Stanford who said, well, the one thing that you have to know about the American system of higher education is it's not a system. So in Europe it is, and I think that's a distinct difference. And we seek to integrate with this existing system of institutions. So it's not, you know, I'm not running around waving the banner of revolution and tearing down the institutions, because I think in terms of, you know, support and, you know, providing a nurturing environment to students, universities do a great job, as well as in the field of quality assurance. But obviously, I think, they are still they're just beginning to learn how technology can help them in all of these efforts, and then making them available to more and more people. And I think that's what their role can be, and it's our role, as I see it as our role, to assist them in that and support them. And what we seek to do when I talk about integrating with the existing institutional infrastructure, we'd like to take advantage of the administrative legal foundation that has been laid in Europe by the Bologna process, and use the European credit transfer system, the ECTS as it is known, that enables you to transfer credit from one institution to another, to create a new sort of new layer, so to speak, in the higher education system on top of what currently exists at the level of local institutions, and that is a platform. I mean, that's the vision, where you have hundreds, potentially thousands of courses from universities all over Europe or throughout the world that you can take for credit. And that is true for students as well as working adults, and it's essentially a digital Erasmus program for everyone. And this is something that I think could be of tremendous benefit. I mean, students could complement their on-campus education with these online courses, and working adults have more flexible options to choose from than they currently have. And I think one of the things that's a little underreported when it comes to online education, and if you talk to people who have been in the e-learning field for the last 20 years, they'll tell you, well, we've known this all along, is that making higher education available at the course level is a huge change. And Clay Shirky, thought leader in the internet space, described it as the iTunes moment of higher education. Not having to sign up for a full degree program and to commit for an entire year, but being able to pick and choose a la carte the best options that are available, and personalizing education to you. Exactly what you'd like to learn. And with that, I think I have 4 minutes 53 seconds, and I thank you very much.
Well timed. Must be working in the digital world. Well, I think we have the answer from Hannes, which is that he's not taking on ETH Zurich. He's working with them, right? Yeah. With the use of Bologna degrees, recognized certification, ECTS, and so forth. Well, Isaac, from what we would say young and successfully growing university at the Higher School of Economics.
Yes, thanks. Я буду говорить.
I
will speak in Russian, particularly because we have education with no walls. Because now there's a popular metaphor, university without walls. And we understand that this is connected both with possibilities and risks. And for sure, our university is a young one, but I'll tell you frankly that it orients on the traditional model. It occupies its place and is looking for its place in the premium segment of higher education. And I think that for a long time we will have universities from this elite segment, for research universities where the courses, considering their importance, that diversity or edX can give, is not the most important thing. But the most important is the involvement of students in researches and real projects. And I think that our discussion about the dynamics of higher education should divide these two types of universities. I don't see in the near future significant changes in the sector of research institutes. As for the so-called teaching universities, aimed at the formation of some sort of competences, here it seems that the dynamics of mass online courses can drastically change the situation. But also here I would be careful, because In a parallel with this technological revolution, during the recent 20 years, we see another revolution, a more significant one as I see it, namely the expansion of higher education. 25 years ago, only 20% of graduates of Russian universities went to higher educational institutions. Those were the best graduates, the so-called cream of the cream. And today, this number is over 80. It means that to these teaching universities, young people come with another preparation, with another culture, and sometimes from families where parents did not have higher education. And what do we want? To give them a real higher education connected with another culture. Should we want to change it to a number of courses? Does that mean that we lower social mobility? While giving them higher education. And considering the importance of this technological revolution, I think we have a challenge in the dynamics of education, in the emergence of this large group of students that can be called untraditional students, for whom the university should solve an issue of creating a culture, understanding skills, and the skill to write and speak in an intelligent way. And I think that the answer to this challenge will become the agenda of the development of higher education in the next decades. Thank you.
About the perhaps redifferentiation between the research universities and the more broadly based universities is something that we'll face. Many of you know that in Russia we have a program called 5 in 100 to increase the international competitiveness of Russian universities. Last week I was in Kyoto, where I learned that the Japanese government has a program called 10 in 100, perhaps about twice as ambitious as in Russia. But there is one thing I can say with absolute certainty, that there will only be 100 universities in the top 100 universities, depending on how you count. So this race to the top, this race to achieve this broad, intense investment in university research, maybe will sometime find its limit, and we'll find this new clarity in the roles of different types of universities. Well, the next speaker is Valery, representing a view from the corporate university, from Sberbank.
Thank you, Edward.
I would like to start with figures. For sure, during the last 10-15 years, corporate universities have become a new phenomenon in education sphere. And if we look at the United States, since 1997 to 2007, a number of companies that say they have corporate universities had decreased to 2,000. And in the world, according to the data, over 4,000 companies say they have corporate schools. And that's a significant number, a significant change in demands from the traditional education market. In 2012, according to Boston Consulting Group, only in 20 leading companies spent $400 million for corporate education. And it is clear that there is a diversity in models and target groups of corporate universities, but yet there is a number of reasons that promote further development of this trend. It seems to me that there are three such reasons. Why did it happen at the turn of the 20th century? 21st century. It is obvious that today human capital is becoming the competitive advantage for the companies that are eager to get sustainable success, and we see in parallel simultaneous trend, a growing deficit of high-quality labor force. And here companies are worried to guarantee the compliance to their strategies of the staff that they have. And the second point is we see the change in the notion of corporate universities. 15 years ago, those were educational centers where the major programs were trainings in developing some or other skills. Today in the world and in Russia as well, in several cases, we see corporate universities that are generally business schools inside the corporation or business group. And this means we have another, a different model when such universities are strategic partners of companies. And the third point I would like to know, the third driver, is that we have an obvious gap between the expectations of the companies and the quality of graduates traditional universities give. There's a number of studies in BRIC countries where 15 or 30% of all the graduates in all spheres are capable to find jobs and are ready to work. We see that today many universities do not prepare experts in big data. And if we take financial institute industry, we see low-quality programs in risk management. It's a traditional problem, the questions of different speeds of clients, of market, because they develop quicker than universities. But it seems to me that here we have another important trend, a global one, not only for BRIC countries or Russia. It is what we've already discussed. If we look at Europe or Russia or a number of other regions, this phase in the development, or the first stage in the development of universities has finished. The United States have top 10 excellent research universities that define the cream of the national system, but they also have the strongest global reputation. The same can be seen in some projects in Europe, 5 in 10, 5 in 100, 10 in 100. That's also an attempt to shift from traditional university systems. And if we look from the point of corporate world, the leading corporate schools, they won't cooperate with low-quality universities. They will cooperate with those business schools that aim to get international reputation. And a few words to sum it up. I will tell about the experience in the development of corporate university of Sberbank in order to illustrate my previous words. Sberbank corporate university has 35,000 managers of the Sberbank group. We have different programs in our packets of professional skill development and others, but for sure we create our own ecosystem. And on the one hand, we have a strong virtual school on Saba platform where all our 35,000 managers are enrolled into, and we have international alliances with international schools, with Stanford, with London School of Business, High School of Business in Berkeley, and above that, as IBM Corporate University and many others, we aim at the model leader teaches leader, understanding that today we are not able to get a systematic support from the leading universities in the development of the strategies of our own company. in such a large group of managers. And in conclusion, I'd like to say that the alliance and partnership between corporate universities and leading universities will grow and develop. But on the other hand, other universities miss the chance because they lose in this competition.
Points. I think the principal one being that from the corporate world, the most important outcome of universities is talent. It's people, it's graduates with the right skills or something like the right skills, the right attitudes, the right orientation, the right knowledge base. And I would agree with you that this, in the last 10 years, the appearance of these wide number of corporate universities is really a reflection of the perception that the traditional university system is not preparing the right combination of attitudes and skills for the workforce. Well, so Valieri works after students go through a university, by the time they work at Sberbank, where Elena works at the period before universities, preparing them in the schools.
Yeah.
So, I would like to start with the fact that it's not a mistake that I'm here, as many of you would think, because I'm a representative of a school community, and here we have people from higher education system. But nevertheless, in 2010, Rosnano has paid attention to a certain problem that universities who prepare personnel for research institutions and higher technologies sphere cannot find any qualified employees, because there were fewer school graduates who could enter the university. Then we had quotas for studies, and so we had to do some system changes in school. For example, we needed to make some we had to establish a project to move towards schools and to establish some bases in schools. I won't tell about the project in details. I'd like to draw your attention only to one point. For 4 years, we've been implementing a specific program which can't be represented either by a school program or high school education program. We have high school students, we have teachers, and they enter online programs. We call them competitive educational programs, and they can upgrade their skills and knowledge in the sphere of modern natural sciences, high-tech, and so on and so forth. And approximately 300 people reach the end of the program, and in summer they gather for a program which is called Nanograd, and it gathers 150 school children and 100 adults, and they divide into 2 groups. And together they start to master some joint program, and the key of it is case study and research practices which work on the basis of cases prepared by business circles. And the program exists for 4 years, and it's a successful one, and it seems to us that it's a specific program which accounts for about 300 hours and 12 credits. It's a new format in educational space, and it can't be regarded as a school project or higher institution project, because it's an online project and it's a non-linear project, and it has a key parameter of joint work of research, business, teaching school children and students. So they establish new practices which seem to us very precious, and to implement the project we have found some major results, and I'd like to dwell upon them. The first one, we have partially mentioned it. Online programs are wonderful, and wide access gives us an opportunity to establish a lift, but we often don't establish this lift because, in fact, we only divide population, because a large part of our youth uses internet only for entertainment, and it hardly can realize that these programs are based for their entry in the sphere of science and education, because often these children do not have proper tutor, and very often teachers and tutors are not ready to escort their students during this course, and that's the second problem. And we have the third problem. There is no point to do anything without close cooperation with business circles, and business circles are not ready to cooperate with education, and they don't give modern up-to-date cases which can generate knowledge and education. But despite all the difficulties and challenges, I think this program answers the key challenge which you, Mr. Chairman, have mentioned at the beginning. You said that youth considers education boring and they do not want to get education. So I think this kind of educational space establishes some non-boring, interesting atmosphere which merges with culture and research. I think a future lies behind it.
Together, students or learners of different ages of the schools and of the universities and adults is a very non-traditional one. We tend to think of universities as, or the education system as layer upon layer which you move into and out of, rather than mixing between very often. Now we'll turn to a researcher and an innovator in education, Olivier.
Thank you. What I will try to do in 5 minutes is to present a completely different perspective from the one we just had there, but linked to education. Since 2008, I've been looking in many different circumstances worldwide for models of disruption in education. But instead of starting with the problems of a cost, problems of a level, inadequation, instead of starting with the great ideas, because you find great ideas everywhere for decades about what should be the future of education, we started by looking at great ideas that works on the ground. Those programs everywhere in the world, in rural areas in India, in the favelas in Brazil, or in the best universities that work. And that's not easy. The evaluation is not always there, but we're looking for people who are bringing incredible transformative impact on education, bringing education to life, making it interesting to the learners and making it relevant to the real life. So when you do this, and you do this with plenty of universities and plenty of other players, we started launching call for projects everywhere in the world. And what you see very quickly is that there are very many disruptive players, very many new players. Universities are still an actor of innovation in education, and I'll talk about 3 aspects. But you see social entrepreneurs, you see public-private partnerships, you see many other players reinventing education, and that's extremely positive. So, talking about universities, the first one we identified as playing a key role, this was quite a few years ago, was the MIT OpenCourseWare. The MIT OpenCourseWare, today, it's something which has been happening for a long time, sharing knowledge online. But when we discussed this with the US, but with the president of Peking University, with the vice minister of Indonesia, and as higher education people, they said, when the MIT decided to give some content for free, it was a revolution for us. And it was challenging. It's emulation. We should all compete to give our best content in a way. So this is traditional universities in a way being really innovative. Now one key point for me is that we often tend to oppose high academic achievements, studies, humanities, and adequation for work, professional training. I think both go well together. We've seen, and Martha Nussbaum wrote an essay about US and India's education. If you don't have the right level of humanities, maybe you train some very good engineers, but you don't train some good citizens, and then you've got tensions, and then you've got problems of development. So you need humanities, and you need some good professional training. But why don't universities do so? Why don't they do both? So I'm giving an example of a university, Université de Moncton in Canada. They are maintaining a very high level of academic achievements, but the courses, the lessons are taking place over 3 or 4 months. For 6 months, students are doing training periods in big companies. I mean, why don't universities also, like business schools, or think about adding to history or whatever they want to teach, also some training in the companies and this kind of partnership. And another thing I would like to challenge is the idea that big companies or big universities are a guarantee of talent. And what we see now emerging are some very, very, very good, well-trained academic people coming out of a research institute, coming out of the big universities, and starting some open, collaborative research networks. I'm giving an example of biohackers in Paris. There's a guy, he's been doing the best PhD in biotechnologies, but then he said, it's too elitist for me. So I start a 300,000 euros laboratory because I've just been collecting all the material from private companies, giving it to me. I put it in a squat, and I start an open biohackers lab. And we do research, and it is connected to Berlin, connecting to Polynesia, connected to other places in the world. Each small biohackers lab is working on issues which are locally relevant on biotechnology, and they're doing this. It's open, it's free, and the quality of what is coming out is starting to be there. But it can be done in partnership with universities too. So that's a real disruptive model too. We are in an open innovations forum, so I think we have to look at high quality, very high talents working outside of institutions, and this is happening. So, okay, so but now I would like to come to the real challenge that I've seen. We are talking around 2030 of 400 million students in higher education, which is great, which is huge, and which is a big challenge for universities and higher education. But if you look at the world globally, we are also talking about 2 billion people, young, living in slums in 2030. And they won't have access to school, we can't pay for these schools. They won't have access to the internet, so it doesn't even make the MOOCs the right solution. So, but they will be young and willing to have a future. And there are people looking for solutions for this. And you find plenty of social entrepreneurs. I'm going to give you one example and to take you one step further. Looking at the people doing things on the ground, there's a good partnership between the BBC, between academics, English teachers, between the state and between telecom operators in Bangladesh. It's called BBC Janala. It started quite a few years ago. Maybe it will finish soon. The idea is how to teach English to millions of people. They don't have internet, but they have TV in the villages. So you make a TV series and a TV game. Then you add to this a website where you can download additional contents. Then you make a partnership with telecom operators and you send the equivalent of 3 minutes of English lessons via mobile phone every day for free, almost for free, because the telecom operators and the state made an agreement. So the Bangladeshi people get these lessons from English, which is key for work. If you don't speak English in Bangladesh, it's going to be tough to find a work. If you speak English, it's better. It makes it fun. It's engaging. You got a series. You do it on your, not a mobile phone like this one, on a very simple, basic mobile phone, text messages. You take tests, you make progress, but the best is that the village people, they go and watch the TV program together, and then they work together. So you have real-world learning communities which are happening. And that's quite cheap, okay? And it's millions of people learning. And it's better than a teacher with 50 students in the school hitting them on the finger if they don't repeat. It's working much better in terms of pedagogy. So that's one of the examples, but if I go one step further, and you stop me when I have to, the problem with all this innovation, okay, is that they are isolated. They work in pockets of isolation. And there, I think that the key thing, and that's what we're trying to do with the Open Education Challenge in Europe, is we have to bring together the best pedagogues, the best universities, together with the creative and the digital industries, together with the social entrepreneurs, together with finance, to find the solutions we need for tomorrow. And these partnerships are not really happening. Most of the time, in the new players, they are coming from the gaming industry, coming from the other sectors, they are doing it without the academic world. And this table here, we are talking about innovation education without the gaming and without many of these crazy players, which are making together much better things. So that's what I'm calling for, what I'm trying to do with the Open Education Challenge, with the Institute of Research, with plenty of other players. How do we support this development together? And there are key fields like learning analytics. When you get to know the learners better, you can do plenty of things through gaming, for plenty of things. That's really for the future. And we see startups happening. I see some doing things. One is called Think with Things. And Think with Things is taking everyday object plus application and spreading it for almost free across the world to learn another way of thinking, of doing things. Sorry. I guess I've said what I wanted to say. The other change I've seen in the last year is that the private sector, it's not only they are doing the corporate companies and corporate universities, they are also now getting involved in CSR projects in education worldwide. So if you have academics plus private sector plus the creative and digital people, we can solve many or bring new solutions to many parts of the world, which are key. And usually, when it's frugal, when you do it in a crazy way, somewhere in the slums of India, you learn to improve back into the developed countries. I'm done.
Thank you, Olivier. Well, by coincidence, as I mentioned yesterday, I was in the room the day at MIT when we decided to do OpenCourseWare, or when we proposed it first. And it actually was quite a revelation, you know, that the content is not the thing of value, that the learning is the thing of value, and the students are the things of value, right?
We forget them usually, though.
Right. So these different approaches that you've outlined are new ways at coming at this. I'm going to ask Alexei to say a few words too.
Yes, I wasn't going to. Since you've talked about the OpenCourseWare and Olivier had mentioned it, I actually happened to be at that time a graduate student at Stanford. And we, after the announcement was made, we had a meeting chaired by the provost of Stanford, where one question was on the agenda: should Stanford do the same? Because MIT is doing it. So my point, I guess, is that the excellence and quality is always driven by competition. And if you talk about U.S. universities, by jealousy, one university, which is fine, big universities compete with one another. But that runs into an issue which we all are aware of, that universities are very slow to change or adapt, because in order to be competitive, you have to be in a constant process of change, as companies are to the markets. And universities are snobs, you know, they think they know what is best, because they teach, right? So that is a very different dynamics we're talking about when we need to actually be prepared in order to be competitive in whatever form it takes, be it the open big MOOCs, or even that is now being, you know, changing, as you've mentioned. Or being a big universities, top 10, 20, 30, or being corporate universities. It's on one world of competition. And whoever wins the competition will ultimately win the customer, because it's about the customer, right? Even for universities. So that was my point.
Margarita, would you like to say a few words about the partnerships that are being developed?
Спасибо.
Thank you very much. You know, today we listened to many experts. Some said that the country that has paid education has problems, and someone said that those who have free education have problems. Russia has higher education that is free of charge, but unfortunately we're facing certain problems. While China and many other countries are among those where all higher education are paid for, China has no free education. And at the same time, we understand that each university, in order to move forward, to survive, it should earn money. And one of the main income items is paid education. And now we're discussing where are the markets for the export of our and your education. And today, the main market of the export of education is China. It hadn't been this way recently. The first market was in India, and in 2007, 2008, the situation has changed quite recently. In 2000, only 38,000 of Chinese students have chosen Western education. The majority went to some corporate programs. Nowadays, this year, 550,000 went abroad, went to get foreign education, and 95% of them went to pay for their education themselves. And as for state financing or corporate financing, doesn't make up quite a lot of students. Why so many Chinese people go abroad to get foreign education there? And the question here is that currently the possibility of getting higher education in China is not compensated by the demand. 13.5 million Chinese graduates, school graduates, graduate each year, and from 9 million to nearly 9 million go to pass Russian state exams, and this gives them a possibility to get enrolled to Chinese universities. But there are only 6 million places in Chinese universities, and till this number won't grow, because currently China works on the improvement of the quality of their higher education, but not on the enlargement of the places. Though currently China has quite significant breakthrough in higher education, and now 5 Chinese universities are in the top 100. And as for the Chinese program, I think they will attain the result that by 2020, 10 Chinese universities will be in top 100. And now they have 5, but I think by 2020 they will have 10. And I really think that this program will be implemented successfully. But that's not only because of the number of places that China is the most profitable and prospective market of education, but also we should consider the mentality of the Chinese people. The policy, the demographic policy of China, where in one family has 1 child, led to the fact that 1 child has too many parents, and therefore they are ready to invest all efforts. And the mentality of Chinese people is that the main investment is the investment to the future. And it's necessary to give better future to their children, and thus the child gets quite a lot of financing from many parents, from all grandmothers, grandfathers, and so on, and it gives the possibility to choose foreign education, which is much more expensive than in China. The education in China currently, though it is paid for, you can earn to get it, because we know how much the income in China grew, and that also influenced the choice of Western education and the fact that Chinese children went abroad to study. And education in China costs, beginning with $900 per year, and finishing with $4,000 per year. And that's for Chinese people. And many choose Western education, having the possibilities given by China, getting educational loans. And this day, on the export of education, China, in China is the United States, then England, Canada, and Australia. Russia missed its first place. It had in 1990s, and we now have over 1% of all the Chinese graduates. But I hope that today's event will influence the situation, and we will change it and more actively enter the Chinese market, thus giving the possibility for our universities to improve their financial status, expand their capabilities in this cooperation. Thank you.
the Chinese higher education system does in fact struggle with this enormous problem that will be seen in many earlier stage of development nations of trying to both increase the quantity of the places, but also trying to maintain the quality of the education as it does that, which is indeed a great struggle. Well, colleagues, you've been sitting here too long passively, so I have a question that I'd like to ask you all. So if we can have the question come up. Oh. Well. Yes. Yes. So I hope that many of you can read this in one language or another. But I'll read it to you. There's dynamic change going on in the educational model. Is the interaction between traditional and new players, one, competition, two, a mix of competition and collaboration, or three, collaboration. So these different forces that we've heard today that are working together in education, are they one, competition? Is there competitiveness? Is it a mixture? Or is there really a collaborative effort going on? So please take your clickers now. Yeah? They have clickers? Yes? No, there's supposed to be another box.
Some people have.
Well, if you have one, please click now. 1, 2, or 3. The chairman doesn't get to vote.
You are independent.
So are we getting votes? Yeah, maybe we'll take a question while they figure that out. So let me.
A mix.
So I actually would like to open the floor to our colleagues who might want to comment on each other's comments just for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience for about another 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Yes. I'm not surprised. There is a mix of competition and collaboration. I think the major point is that to create world-class program, world-class education program, we need critical mass. We need high-level intellectual cluster work together. It means that on one hand, depend on individual university. Sometimes the human capacity, may not so sufficient. If we can work together with other people, we can build up the synergy, the critical mass, and also the cutting edge, to provide high quality education. But for what? But maybe for the second order competition again, just stop here.
So Leah, does Harvard feel threatened by all this new online stuff, for example? Does it fit in your strategy?
We have thought a great deal about the online, and in fact, our institutions have a very, I think, very interesting collaboration going on now. I think we have looked at online in two ways. One is we've been very interested in putting out MOOCs, and have had some I think, very interesting and very successful ones. And to go to Olivier's point, both successful in a more scientific sense. So we have a course on introductory computer programming that's been extremely successful, and a course on the statistics of public health. But we've also had very successful courses on the history of China, on poetry, and so both things have existed for us. Those are things that we consider part of our broader mission and about sharing in education, but at the same time it's created a very big reservoir of information about how people learn, and we've found that we've been able to translate that into our own classrooms, and I think ultimately would like to translate that into research that we would be able to share more broadly with the community. So yes, we've been very interested in online, and both because we I believe continue to change, so I don't agree with Alexei about that, but also because it's important for us to, part of how you stay ahead is by changing and by looking at what other people are doing. So I think it is very much that combination of collaboration and competition.
Olivier?
To add on what you're saying, Leah, I think that research about what you've been doing is great, and to be shared is fantastic. And if you can do some more research outside really the world of universities on education issues, it will nurture both academic world and the outside world, because all these innovation going on in the world, most of them are not really evaluated, and the people lack the competencies to evaluate the real impact and the ways of scaling them up. So this would be great. Something else about research is that more and more in some schools, some teachers in younger age school are using the research approach to teach the children, and I think this is very interesting and could be spread more in allowing the students to question, to do a lot of these things, and that's another way which is key of collaboration between the academic levels. Higher education is not apart from what is happening before and after, and all these connections, and notably even through the research approach as a pedagogy, seems of interest to me.
I'm not as optimistic, and I agree that I agree about the desire, our wish to have research-oriented mass education, but there is a very simple question. Again, we have students with low academic culture and motivation. And the second, we don't have professors for these universities. In India, as I remember, less than 50% of university-level colleges have PhDs, even one PhD among their faculty. Not all professors in these colleges have master's degree. So where are we going to get these professors to fulfill these wonderful UNESCO's ideas?
These are very practical ideas, if I can very quickly. There was a program in Britain called Creative Partnerships that would go to see all the schools where they had difficulties and ask the teachers, are your students curious? Do they like to learn? And the teachers were saying no. I mean, they don't ask questions. Okay, but do you leave them time to ask questions and then to build a lesson? And they said, well, maybe we'll try. So they came back 3 weeks later. And 3 weeks later, the teachers had just given time to the students to ask questions, and they were asking plenty of questions. And this was creating curiosity. And so it's not high-level research, but it's a desire for learning.
So I learned from research and education, and the comment is that we should now start letting people ask questions. Yeah. So is there a microphone that's supposed to be available to go around? Take this one over here first.
Hi, I'm Uther Charlton-Stevens.
You have to speak up quite a bit.
Is it working?
Right.
Hi. I'm Uther Charlton-Stevens. I'm an associate professor and director of the Global Eurasia program at Volgograd State University. And my other hat is that I'm the president of the Asia Education Foundation, which provides charitable scholarships for Chinese students to attend universities in China. And that's a Hong Kong-based charity. I have two quick questions, which is, how do you ensure the comparable and interchangeable quality control when you mix online credits from a wide variety of different institutions? And how do you actually get the money to teachers across a large range of higher education systems to fund their participation. So that you don't have the free MIT and iTunes U courses simply constituting a form of academic dumping, and then on the other side, the high brand universities being able to monetize their prestige through courses which they give credit for and which have the quality control that employers can rely on. In a sense, a lot of the higher education sector could be squeezed on both sides by these different approaches, and I think ideally we all want to see that combination of competition and collaboration.
Yeah. So that's actually two questions. There's a quality control question, which somebody, I think YC, touched on earlier, the whole question of credentials and accreditation and quality control. And there's also the business model, the how are things monetized. Who'd like to take one or the other of those?
Okay, just quickly. Obviously, there are different kinds of courses. It's not loud enough? Okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, I mean, the different kinds of courses, and some things I think lend themselves better towards being taught online than others. So if you want to have an intense discussion on leadership, then doing that in person is probably a good thing. However, you know, you could also do that in an online course in a meaningful way, I think, you know, where people share and you know, their contributions when it comes to topic leadership, and having a wholly new you know, perspective on diversity in these courses can really also enrich that discussion. You know, having people different cultural backgrounds, life experience, age, work experience, and whatnot that you don't have in any university classroom. So that being said, I think there are new forms of quality that will emerge, but the existing ones, you know, you can definitely you know, transpose some of that to an online format. And at Diversity, the way we do it is that, you know, we have universities that teach courses that are part of accredited courses or study online, and then you sit for the same exam. And if you can pass that, then, you know, you've demonstrated your learning in that way. So I'll stop there because I don't want to take up the entire, but I'd also have something to say on the second part, but we can maybe do that later.
Yes, I think this is a very important question because we have different type of innovation to build up new program, new delivery. But the question to us is that how we can ensure quality. If we believe in paradigm shift, it means that the education outcome, the education aim are different. You know, it means that we need to think in depth about what is the new framework or quality assurance, not the traditional one, because the traditional one we know what kind of target we want to achieve, but not for the new education. Maybe we need to work harder on this aspect. Thank you.
Okay. Another question from the audience? One up here. Please speak right into the microphone like on MTV.
Hello.
Yeah.
Меня слышно? Добрый день.
Good afternoon. I'm a representative of Federal University, and I have the following question. How can we protect our educational technologies? We heard that Harvard has its own technologies, but what's the chance that another university will look at your technologies and give the similar course, but with their own material? I think the value of your qualities will be decreased because it will be an economic damping. Do you have any criteria how to protect your educational technologies, not the content, but the technologies itself?
There are really two different issues. The first is that the platform, the technology platform on which we're building our courses is one that we share with MIT and we allow other people to use. So we essentially allow other people to use things on our technology. So I think there is nothing so unique or so proprietary that we believe other people couldn't also translate it and use it. But we haven't viewed it as something where we're trying to make money. And actually, in relation also to the earlier remark about dumping, you know, we have not so far charged anybody for these courses. And while we have debated different models going forward, we really haven't made a decision about what we want to do. And I think because of the way we have viewed this, we haven't viewed this as a generator of income. The most that we would try to do is to break even, which we are not doing at the moment. We are losing a lot of money right now. Very deliberately, that was our choice. It was an investment on our part. But I think that's really part of the answer, is we don't really view that as a threat because we haven't viewed it as proprietary or really as income generating.
Elena?
Я тоже хочу ответить на этот вопрос.
I'd like to answer the question, and I'd like to answer in a simple way. You don't need to protect educational technologies, and it's impossible to do that. It's a harmless process. They must be open. There is another thing to be protected. You need to protect your students and your teachers, because they can be a part of the corporate educational system. If you have the protection of your teachers and students, then you have no threats in front of you. And in this case, you will establish the form of different standards. I have a short comment regarding this issue. Some time ago in Moscow, a new university emerged with a similar title to the title of our university. Our university is called the National Research Institute, Higher Institution of Economy, and that institute was called the National Institute of the Higher School of Management. And people mixed these titles because in Russian language they're quite similar, but when some time passed, everyone understood the difference. And of course, you understand that a bad teacher can steal a good content, but the course won't be a good one.
On this, I think, important question for our debate. And my point is that you can protect yourself only through your organizational capabilities for change. If the university is a permanent generator of new educational technologies and new knowledge, then you can protect yourself for sure.
I had a mentor who used to say the way to win a race is to look forward and run fast, not to look backwards and try and hit people with a stick. We have time for one more question. Is there one more question from any place? Huh?
Can I? Yeah, слышно?
Do you hear me?
Bring to life great leaders. Great universities bring to life great leaders, and people come to universities and they accept the values and culture and then spread it around. With new technologies, with new approaches to education, we see that people, the decision is moved to an individual, and he or she can choose which university, how to do. And in this respect, I have a question: who will be the operator of this process? Because so far, universities are a very solid part of our society. And if we move this to individuals, who will operate his or her life, the necessity, economic necessity, his personal desires and strives? Thank you.
Someone want to take that? Well, good question. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I think it's an excellent question, and I think it's very related to YC's concerns about quality, because I think part of what universities have traditionally done is assured the quality of the content, of the information, of the research, of the teaching, and in some ways the quality of their graduates as well. And I think one of the reasons why we all like to get together as people, you know, why we are not doing this by Skype right now, is because there are certain things that we get as people by being together. And so I think it's a very good question, and I think it's another reason why there is great good and great potential in the online. But I think certain kinds of education and functions of the universities won't go away. It's an excellent question.
Yeah, the whole question of how we nurture a generation, how we nurture people, right?
I agree. Excellent question. Because education has multiple functions. Knowledge delivery, skill delivery is only part of the function. Education serves political stability, cultural continuity, and also social development at different levels, individual level, community level, and also the system level. It means that when we're talking about the education quality, maybe we need to keep in mind what aspect we are talking about, what function we want to serve. You know, otherwise we mix together how we can make the quality assurance workable. Very difficult, you know. Thank you.
So I'm reminded that I was once told by a student that I taught him more over beers at the pub than I did during the education. And at first I thought this was very good because it means I had taught him something, and then I realized how many hours I had spent teaching him in a classroom. And I was able to teach him more over a few beers than at all that time in the classroom. But we do pass on to our colleagues a great deal of wisdom and empathy and other concerns. We'll take one more question, and I'm going to ask for a, is there a question up here?
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Anton Pogrebnoy. I'm representative of Skolkovo Institute of Science and Technologies. I'm very happy to see the rector of our university, and my question is addressed to everyone, and it's the following. Today, online resources enable us to get education in many ways more efficient than traditional universities provide for. Perhaps this system is based on the mechanism of high amount of recommendations these online courses give than in comparison to traditional universities. How do you think, how can we improve the dynamics of the development of modern universities via improving recommendation services in higher education institutions?
Maybe a quick answer.
Быстрый ответ.
So quick answer is like a biological supplement. It's not a drug. It won't help. It can help, but it won't bring in any drastic changes.
Concluding comments, Levtina Chernikova, the rector of MISIS in Moscow.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Edward. I'd like to say that today we had a lot of interesting questions, and there were a lot of interesting issues raised. Our university is a participant of the program 5 out of 100, and we have as our goal the entrance into the international educational sphere. Our university has the 100-year history, and now we are targeting classic approaches to education, and we are a dynamically developing innovation platform as well. And it seems to me that in order to solve all the educational issues connected with quality, we need to focus on the principles of professionalism and openness. We need to cooperate more closely with business circles. Yelena has told today that has enumerated the programs which are getting prepared for school children, and I'd like to say that there are joint programs with Rosnana for our master students, and we have launched one of the programs this year. And in my point of view, the demands of our time are the following. It's not enough to have one qualitative professional education. Life is so dynamic at the moment that we need to learn something new every day in a literal sense of the word, and so do our students need, and so modern approach must transcend the borders of the higher professional education. We need to establish the system of continuous education in order to have all our students build his own educational trajectory on any part and in any period of his professional activity. Will there be new players? Of course there will be, but any university which takes care of its reputation and which sets goals to train specialists who will be highly competitive will spend a lot of time and effort to the quality issues, and the quality issue is impossible without close cooperation with business community. And in my point of view, close cooperation within the framework of the activity of one university is very important in regards of education and research components, and we need to socialize the process. We need some extra classes, some extra training, because only professional competence is not enough at the time. Our modern employers want their employees have vivid personal qualities. They want them to be good individuals. So we need to solve these issues as well, and we need to take care of the selection of the students which come to us, and we need to start from schools in order to have motivated university students after that. And if we have our connection on all the steps, starting from professional orientation and finishing with professional start of professional career, then the issue will be solved. Thank you very much.
No. Well, let me just briefly summarize these very good summarizing remarks. That unlike my friend Fruman, I think I leave this discussion as an optimist. That there is, in fact, I think at work here, an interaction of pieces of the system, and it is a system. Whether anyone designs it or not is a different issue. But there is a system here, and there are interactions of these different parts of the system that have the potential for actually quite changing the way university and school and continuing education works. I would say there's a dimension of depth that the corporate representatives are interested in, that there are certain things we want our students to know well. There's a dimension of breadth which society wants us to leave our students with, so that they're good citizens, that there's an emerging market, and that there's, I think, this theme of quality, of how do we do this with quality, has persisted throughout the conversation today. But I will conclude by agreeing with my friend Fruman that I think I like universities with walls better. Thank you all for coming today.